Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to visit the exhibit by the Ukraine House in Denmark. It is my pleasure now to welcome Jonas Parello-Plesner, who is the Executive Director of the Alliance of Democracies Foundation, and Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, who is the National Leader of Belarus.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonas.
Good morning, Copenhagen. Good local time to everybody listening in everywhere in the world. It's wonderful to be back here with you all in the Royal Playhouse. We're gathered here for 2 days of freedom and optimism. And it's now my pleasure to welcome on stage Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, leader of Belarus. She's here. Have a seat. Thank you, audience, for following what goes on. So that reminds me that you're part of this, and you can all ask a question. That's why I have the iPad up here. So you can go to your app, ask a question, and I will try to see if we can get them into the conversation. Sviatlana, welcome to the stage again. Welcome here to Copenhagen. You've come straight from Aachen in Germany, pretty early morning flight, and you came from there because of the Charlemagne Prize, the Karls Prize, which you received well-deservedly last year. And this year it went to President Zelensky. I know the two of you also had a short meeting. I have a couple of quotes here from when you received the Charlemagne Prize. At that occasion you said, "Let us ensure that dictators won't make history again. The history and the future should belong to us, the free people of Europe." And you also said, what happens in Belarus and Ukraine is the fight between democracy and tyranny. We all want to see a victorious Ukraine and a free Belarus. When and how do you think that could happen?
Good afternoon, everybody. I think that no one expert at the moment can say when the war in Ukraine will be over or when Belarusians will get rid of the regime. But our task now is to fight with the tools we have and with the capacity we have. But we have to remember that in our region, the fate of Belarus and the fate of Ukraine are intertwined. We have different contexts, but our fight is the common one. The fight against tyranny, the fight for freedom and independence and democracy in our countries. And we Belarusian people support Ukrainian as much as we can in this fight because victory of Ukraine for sure will bring new wind of opportunities for us Belarusians, and actually brave people of Ukraine give us hope and energy to continue our fight. So our task is keep unity among democratic forces, to stay in contact with people inside the country, to connect people with those who fled Belarus, to work out on common strategy, on common plans, and to keep constant stress on Lukashenko's regime. Of course, it's our obligation of Belarusian people to win this fight, but it's so important to have strong allies around. And I'm so grateful to democratic countries who are standing with Belarusians, who are standing with Ukrainians, because both our countries are fighting not only for their land or for independence, of their countries. We are fighting with tyranny, we are fighting with dictatorship, and it's moral obligation for the countries to support us on this extremely difficult and painful but right path.
In the war in Ukraine, I mean, Lukashenko, the dictator, has become even close linked to Putin. Russian military attacks are staged through Belarus. We've even heard Putin talk about introducing nuclear weapons in Belarus. What can free Belarusians sort of do and Belarusians inside?
So actually now Belarus faces two main problems. It's an internal humanitarian crisis and possible loss of our independence, because Lukashenko now is selling to Kremlin our country piece by piece. We see the presence of Russia in all the sphere, in military sphere, cultural, economy, media sphere, and we call it creeping occupation. And the deployment of nuclear weapon in Belarus is also a kind of occupation, because with this step, Kremlin can anchor their presence in our country. And even after changes, it will be so difficult to get rid of their presence. That's why I say at the moment that this problem, possible deployment of nuclear weapon, is overlooked among Western countries. But I call leaders to look at this problem from the point of view of Belarusians, because we suffered from Chernobyl disaster. We know that just in case crazy dictators will push this red button, counterattack will be on Belarus, because this weapon will be launched from our country. And it's very important to prevent deployment, not to think that it's bluffing or to think that it will not change anything for security in the region. It will change a lot for us, Belarusians. And as I said, it's not like our local problem. You know, it's a problem of democratic countries to prevent this from happening.
It's a tough job to stand up to a dictatorship as Lukashenko's. I know you work tirelessly as well for political prisoners. Your own husband is one among them. What can we also do, also here in the audience, and to sort of help him and other political prisoners languishing in Lukashenko's prisons?
Actually, as I have already mentioned, the first huge, painful problem in Belarus is humanitarian crisis. The situation became even worse with political prisoners. Every day, on average, 11 people every day are being detained in Belarus. Not only those who are opposing the regime, but also those who are supporting Ukraine, and Ukrainians became enemies of this regime. You know that we have to divide Lukashenko, who became accomplice to Putin in this war, and Belarusian people who said they decisive no to the war, and there were plenty acts of sabotage on railways. Our people collect information about the presence of Russian troops and deliver this information to Ukrainian. People are donating money to Ukrainian army. Military volunteers from Belarus are fighting shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainians. So that's why you know, there are so many people who became, as I said, enemies to this regime, and actually, the number of political prisoners now is unknown. We have 1,500 official names, but human rights defenders centers lost counting, and they think that it's up to 5,000 people in prisons. And this is, you have to understand that the attitude to political prisoners is much, much worse than to ordinary people. People are kept in incommunicado mode. For example, I haven't heard from my husband for more than 2 months. You know, people are ill-treated, people are humiliated constantly and being tortured. And we don't know about the fate of many political prisoners. Recently, Viktor Babarika, who was presidential hopeful in 2020, was brought to hospital, severely beaten, actually. And when society started to discuss, you know, what's going on, wanted to reach to Viktor, he disappeared. And since then, we don't know what's going on. The same with Masha Kolesnikova, who was my comrade back in 2020, and hundreds and hundreds of people. We have people with severe diseases in prisons, with cancer, with heart attacks, and they don't have any medical treatment at all. So we are calling international institutions who have been created to solve such humanitarian crises, you know, at least to demand release of people who with severe diseases, with minors. The oldest political prisoner is a 71-year-old woman. So it's horrible, and without any. So these people has to be released just for humanitarian reasons. So what what society people can do to raise awareness. Don't let dictator to kill people in silence. Every sign of solidarity really matter. When politicians take our political prisoners, just take good parenthood of political prisoners, when you write letters to them, when you support children and families of political prisoners, when you donate to funds who are collecting money to support people in Belarus or those who already served their terms, they usually also flee Belarus and need psychological help. They need healthcare programs, so support us, to organize this. Ordinary people can provide information to your neighbors, relatives about what's going on in Belarus, and let not this problem of political prisoner disappear from your minds.
Thank you. No, I think we admire your also personal courage with your family situation, having your husband, as you mentioned, where you don't have the latest whereabouts. And I think these are very practical steps for all of us. Writing, I remember doing that a year ago in Vilnius at an event, and writing just a physical letter as well to a young Belarusian's mother who was there in the audience. So I would encourage everybody to do that, to do some of those practical steps. I have an audience question here. What lessons can be learned from the Belarusian experience for other countries facing authoritarian rule and repression? And how can solidarity and cooperation be built across borders in this struggle?
What lessons can be
learned from the Belarusian experience for other countries facing authoritarian rule?
I think that democratic countries can learn some lessons from countries who are facing dictatorship. Is that dictators cannot be appeased and cannot be re-educated. For many, many years, the democratic world was trying to appease Putin with trading, for example. Yeah, but we have to know that bear is always bear. It's not a pet. Even if you appease him with sugar, it will show its natural instinct, blood, war. It's in the DNA. So we have to get rid of dictatorship and to replace dictators with democracies. So let's not forget about this. And again, fight with dictatorship is not fight of any separate country. It's a global fight, because now we see already how dictators are launching alliances, like Iran, China, Russia, Lukashenko, and they of course want to oppose democracy. And democracy has to show its teeth. We have to, if democracy doesn't have instruments now how to accept political and economical isolation, we have to work on these instruments. We have to reform institutions that have been created, to install peace, and democracy in the countries, but now we see that they can't do a lot in these cases. Democracy, these tools couldn't stop Lukashenko from tyranny, couldn't stop Putin from the war. It means that we have to look in the core of the problem. And for people who are fighting against dictators, I wish hope. Don't lose this hope and create structures, be always in contact with people who are fighting, and know that sooner or later dictatorship will be over in your country. But now your task, it's painful, but to fight with it.
Sviatlana, you give us hope. I mean, when we now in a short minute leave the stage, is there anything, last words you want the audience here to go out and do to help Belarus toward freedom?
I just want to tell you that the world shouldn't forget about Belarus. I know that there are many different issues in the world. I'm grateful that you are supporting Ukraine. I'm grateful that you are supporting Belarusians. Because when we feel that we are not alone, it gives us energy, to continue. And I honestly can say that Belarusian people will never, and I repeat, never give up our fight.
Thank you.